Today, we're going to be revealing the top 10 areas in Adelaide that have seen the most rental growth for both houses and units.
We're seeing good rental yields, 3-month rental growth of 22.5%.
What is number 3 on the list, Beck?
Number 3 on the list is Plympton Park. Past 3 months, 29.3%.
Joining us, expert property manager with decades of experience and founder of Trove Property Management, Beck Day, revealing which areas rents are on the rise towards the end of 2024. What is number 2 on the list then?
Number 2 on the list is Noarlunga Downs. It's seen a lot of knockdowns, rebuilds. We're seeing 3-month growth of...
The big thing that we were going to talk about, the change that no one's really seeing in the data just yet.
We're crying out for more unit stock. And I think the big driver behind that is the fact that...
Yeah, wow. To me, that doesn't make sense. It's going to be super important for investors moving forward.
Top rental growth at 32.65%. My favourite on the list is...
So if you've already invested in Adelaide or thinking about investing in Adelaide, understanding where the rental demand is could drastically improve your yield. My name's Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast, and you're listening to my chat with Beck Day. Beck Day, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. It's always good to have you back on the show, getting a little bit more of an insight into the growth for the Adelaide rental market. And you've got a little bit more to unpack as far as some of the stuff that the data's not really telling us yet, but it's going to be super important for investors moving forward. So we can circle back to that towards maybe a little bit more of the end of the show, if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Right now, why don't we jump into this list? Because not only do you have the top 5 rental growth areas for houses, we've got this for units as well. Which one did you want to start with, houses or units?
Let's roll in with houses.
Done. All right, Beck, if we're looking at houses first, what is our first cab off the rank as far as the highest rental growth for Adelaide right now?
Well, interestingly, after trawling through Suburbs Finder, one of the suburbs that has got the highest rental growth over the last 3 months is Darlington.
Darlington.
Sitting at 17.2% over the last 3 months.
17.2%, okay. And tell us a little bit more about Darlington for anyone that's not a local Adelaidean.
Sure. It is about 15k south of the city, and it's sort of nestled not far away from Glenelg, those sort of beach areas, close to Flinders Medical Centre and, a bit of technological hub, which is probably what's driven some of that growth, I would have thought.
And as far as Darlington's concerned, again, a little bit more about the area. Is it more like classic big family homes? Are you talking like renovated properties? Are you talking townhouses? Like, where are you really seeing the demand here? They're
more classic family homes. Traditionally, I'm not really certain of the era, but I would have thought lots in the 60s, sort of, that older era that we're seeing lots of redevelopment or renovations, repairs, but yeah, good sized blocks and good demand.
Okay, so it's not like a 100-year-old area, but it's certainly not a new area.
No, correct.
Gotcha. And there's a bit of redevelopment sort of moving through. So maybe the next kind of like 10, 15 years, it could be more of a townhousey kind of area.
For sure.
Gotcha. All right, Beck, so what's our number 2 on the list?
Number 2, and in actual fact, number 2, 3 and 4 on the list are all northeast of the city.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So Alberton is the next one, showing really good 3-month rental growth at 15.5%.
15.5%, so that's pretty strong. All right, tell us a little bit about Alberton.
Alberton is actually only a fairly small suburb itself, but it's located, sort of heading out towards West Lakes. It's the home of Port Adelaide. That's where Port Adelaide Football Club's where they originated. Okay. But close to hospitals, You
got the Queen Elizabeth nearby?
Yep, reasonably close to the city. Yeah. And
you're pretty close to the water as well. I know West Lakes isn't too far.
True.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And the same kind of deal. This is Alberton. There's a lot of like character 50s builds, 40s builds. Like it's an older area, isn't it?
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. And yield wise, are we a bit more attractive with the yield in Alberton?
Yeah. Yield is up at around 4.3%.
4.3. That is pretty good. Okay. So 4.3% right now. All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add about Alberton before we move on to number 3 for houses?
No, but number 3 is Royal Park.
Royal Park.
Also relatively close to Alberton, just in that similar sort of pocket. Seen almost identical 3-month growth at 15.3% and similar yields as well at 4.22.
I personally find Royal Park a little bit of an anomaly. Like it feels like it's too cheap for how close to the city it is. Because what's the median house price you got on your list there?
The median house price for Royal Park is $740, whereas Alberton was $720.
Yeah, and it just, to me, that doesn't make sense. Like, I'm seeing houses in Morphett Vale now selling for like 700,000. And
Or more.
Yeah, or more. And now you're looking at Royal Park, which is like 10 Ks out of the city or something, similar kind of price range. Yeah, it feels like if this is now getting some rental growth behind it as well, got a decent yield, is the yield a bit low too?
No, decent yield at 4.22.
All right, so both Albert and Royal Park, we're staying pretty close to the city. You said the next four, I think it was, were all kind of that northwestern sort of corridor. Are we closer? Are we further away? Whereabouts are we for number 4?
Next one is Croydon Park.
Croydon Park's even closer to the city.
Even closer to the city.
Okay.
A higher median price here though, sitting at $825, but the 3-month growth at 14.4.
So Croydon Park, so we've got 14.3% rental growth over the last 3 months. And how much closer to town are we for that one?
Probably about 6 or 7 Ks.
6 or 7 Ks out. Okay, so we've got some real good proximity there. And so as far as Croydon Park's concerned, anything else people should know about this one?
Croydon Park is fairly synonymous with the character style homes.
It's like your cottages, bungalows, that kind of stuff?
Correct.
Okay. So that way, if someone's looking at investing for the long term, as far as the supply-demand ratio is concerned, there might be a lot more townhouses popping up, but you can't rebuild a 100-year-old cottage.
No, correct.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, Beck, so tell me about the 5th and final on the list for houses.
The last one that I have on the list from Suburbs Finder is Taperoo.
Taperoo. All right, tell me about Taperoo.
It's a bit of an interesting one. It is further northwest of the city, out in a little bit of an industrial area. You've got Adelaide Brighton Cement out there. You've also got Osborne, which is the location for the submarine builds, which, might be a little bit interesting. You might...
Bit of like economic growth out that way.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. I went there once. There was some pretty big clearance. I sold an apartment for a guy that was like high up in that sector. Went there, actually with Millsy, you know him, and the amount of different checkpoints we had to go through was kind of crazy. It felt a little bit Men in Black.
Right.
Actually, no, Men in Black's aliens, isn't it? That's not the. That's very different.
I can picture you selling real estate in your black suit.
But you're right that as far as economically, all the jokes aside, there is a lot happening out there. And from memory, I think they got those contracts extended. So Taperoo might be a place that's a little bit further away from the city, but it's potentially also a place where there's going to be a lot of people wanting to stay close to work for some longer term government contracts.
Yeah, it's interesting because the median price is much lower too, Todd, at $682,000. So
682. All right. And I don't actually think I asked you, what was their 3-month growth for rent?
14%. 14.11%.
Okay, so 14.11%, and we got 682,000, so under 700,000 for that median house price.
Yeah, and rental yields of 4.19.
4.19. All right, so it's got a decent yield on it, decent buy-in price, and some pretty strong rental growth. Amazing. Anything else you wanted to add to houses before we move on to the unit list?
That's it for me.
Done. All right, so now talking units. What is number 5 on the list here? Let's do this in a bit of a reverse order. Build up a bit of anticipation, Beck.
Number 5 on the list that I have is Blackwood.
Blackwood. Okay. Talk to me about Blackwood.
So more of a southern suburb, and we're seeing good rental yields, good demand, and 3-month rental growth of 22.5%.
22.5%, and this is the lowest on the list.
Correct.
So for Blackwood, I've never lived in Blackwood. I live in Aberfoyle Park nearby, but I do know that it's a very cliquey kind of suburb. It's not just like you live there. It's more of a community kind of vibe. Is there anything that you actually see that's reflective of when you're leasing a property that's either like a pro or a con for that?
Look, there's good demand there, and I think that it's one of those little, like you said, with the click, you're born and bred there, you stay there. People want to remain. It's super close to things, yet you're in the hills, you know, it's undulating, it's pretty, lots of big established trees. It's just a nice little pocket of the world.
Kind of feels like you're in a country town, but you're only like 20 minutes away from town.
True.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So Blackwood, 22.5% for units. What's our next one on the list here?
Next one on the list we have is Queenstown.
Queenstown. So we're going, back out northwest?
Yeah, heading back out towards Alberton way that we talked about with the houses, but this time with units. And 3-month growth there sitting at 26%.
26%. Okay, this is getting big. So what are a few things people should know about Queenstown, Beck?
Look, the type of properties that are there are like, picture, your 60s, 70s build, your cream bricks. They're not, big high-rise unit buildings at all. Little small backyards, which also add to demand. There's a mix of renovated, unrenovated.
Mm-hmm. So Queenstown, for anyone that's not familiar with the area, we're not talking about like 10-storey, 20-storey high-rises. When you're talking units, you're talking more like what classic blonde brick, like 3 packs, maybe like double stories. But this is the kind of stuff that maybe has like a backyard attached to like a courtyard to it, that kind of thing.
And that can be a real game changer with regards to demand. It's a really highly sought after feature.
Do you find pets come into that at all? Is that a part of why people like really have a bit more demand on the courtyard side of things?
As I've stated in your show before, on average, it's 50-50 of tenancies with pets and without. So there's reasons for and reasons against.
Okay. Just thinking, I had a Great Dane in an apartment once, but I wouldn't advise it.
There's plenty of demand for both with pets and without.
Okay. All right, so Queenstown, we're talking 26% rental growth in the past 3 months. We're talking northwest of the city. What's our median price for a unit out there, Beck?
Median price for a unit in Queenstown is $551.
$551, so still pretty affordable. All right, and we're not too far away from town.
And good rental yields too, Todd, of 4.42%.
4.42. Okay, all right. What is number 3 on the list, Beck?
Number 3 on the list is Plympton Park. Heading back south of the city again, we've seen lots of development in Plympton Park. It's really conveniently located close to city, close to beaches, hospitals, race courses, but much newer development in amongst there.
As a Plympton Park, that's almost like smack bang between city and the sea, isn't it? Like Glenelg and Adelaide.
Yep.
Okay, so you're pretty well located. Whether you want to go out and cosmopolitan lifestyle on each side of it, you're in a good spot. But as far as the growth's concerned, how much has it grown in the past 3 months for rent?
Past 3 months, 29.3%.
29.3%. Okay, so that's getting huge. So anyone that's maybe been holding a negatively geared property there for the past 12 months or however long, they might be in for a little bit of a pleasant surprise when it comes to lease renewal.
100%. Yeah.
Excellent.
Look, slightly higher median price, but only by a touch to $575.
All right, $575. And what's our rental yield out there?
Rental yield out there is 4.07%.
4.07%.
So still above the 4s.
Okay. You got a favourite on the list so far? Or like, is there anything that you personally lean towards, both either professionally or personally?
My favourite on the list is probably the next 2.
The next 2?
Yeah.
All right. What is number 2 on the list then?
Number 2 on the list is Noarlunga Downs.
All right. Tell me about Noarlunga Downs.
So Noarlunga Downs is close to train, rail, south of the city, near nice beaches like Christie's Beach. Mm-hmm. It's seen a lot of redevelopment, lots of knockdowns, rebuilds over recent times. And we're seeing 3-month growth of 30%. So
Noarlunga Downs, pretty rough area from where I remember growing up down there. Wouldn't really walk the streets at night, but it's changed quite a bit from then. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, significant changes. And in recent times, basically since COVID.
Right, okay. So a lot more development. You're close to rail. You're close to like Colonnades. You've got a huge shopping centre down there, plus only minutes away from the beach. This is why it's one of your favourite areas, because it's going through a lot of gentrification.
Absolutely. And really high demand. You'll see in here rental yields of 4.93%.
4.93, okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering these are like the average rental yields or median rental yields, it means that you put a deal together, you could still be structuring a 6% rental yield if you get something that's maybe you're putting a little bit of cosmetic love into it, or you get something a little bit more under market value, you could get something close to neutrally geared.
Possibly, yeah. And I wonder too whether or not there's a lot of ex-housing trust stock there on large size allotments, and they're the types of things that are being redeveloped and making the change there.
I had an opportunity to buy a burnt out house there, and I turned it down. It was I offered him $160,000 and he wanted 220. At the time, 220 was a lot for a burnt out house. Now I should have paid him $250. Looking back.
Value of hindsight, we'd all be really rich, wouldn't we?
Absolutely. All right. And what was our rental growth for the past 3 months?
Rental growth for the past 3 months was 30%.
30%. Okay, so that's huge.
It is huge.
Now, our number one area on the list for units in Adelaide, top rental growth.
Top rental growth at 32.65%. And a whopping rental yield of 4.92, I would like to add, is, drumroll please, Aberfoyle Park.
Aberfoyle Park?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about Aberfoyle Park.
Aberfoyle Park, also south of the city. It's kind of like a little bit like Blackwood, but on a slightly cheaper scale, perhaps, is a way of putting it. Lots of development been going on, heaps of services, lots of school choices, big, huge gum trees.
So it's got that kind of same, like, you're in the bush but you're not in the bush kind of feel. You're only 25, 30 minutes from town, but you're walking around Aberfoyle Park. Like, I know they've got that big creek that runs through it. It can feel like you're an hour away from town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, but you're saying like it's a little bit cheaper, so maybe it doesn't have that same kind of trendy vibe that Blackwood might have, but you're cutting a lot off the price to get in there.
Yeah, and it's not that far away from Blackwood either.
Okay, and 32.6% rental growth, that's insane.
Whopping.
And that's 3 months, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's massive. Talk to me about the yield.
Yield at 4.92%.
4.92%. And I can't help but think that a part of this as well is a bit of a supply-demand issue, because there's not huge amounts of units in Aberfoyle Park, is it? Because like you said, like, it's traditionally a family area, 3 and 4 beds.
Correct. And this is something that we're seeing right across Adelaide, and I am sure it's a national thing. You know, traditionally, the great Australian dream is to have a family home, and there's far more homes than units in outlying city areas, whereas we are seeing a massive upswing in demand for units in suburban areas.
Talk to me about that, because that's the big thing that we were going to talk about, the change that no one's really seeing in the data just yet, but something that you guys, we were talking about this just off air, and you're actually like opening up your books and showing me like how many people are coming to opens for units versus houses. Can you open this up a little bit more?
Oh, look, it is massive. You know, we're crying out for more unit stock. And I think the big driver behind that, Todd, is the fact that, you know, average weekly rents have gone up so significantly. Just to use one suburb, for example, that's in my core area. So pre-COVID, a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house in Aldinga Beach was $350 a week.
Okay.
It's now sitting at least $550, probably more. That's like a 60% increase.
Yeah.
Wages have not increased 60%.
No.
You know, like, it's an extra $10,000 a year at least in rent that families are having to come up with. Or if you were previously, you know, whether it be a single mum or a single dad or just a single person without any children, you could afford, you know, a 3-bedroom home on your wage. Whereas now affordability is just not there, and we need things that are cheaper, which points to units, which is why the demand is so great. Like, we have, for example, an open home for a unit, and we might have 40 or 50 people wanting to come. We had one just only last night, and we've already got 29 applications. Whereas in comparison, you know, we're still leasing houses hand over fist, but in comparison, we might only have 6 people attend a home inspection and only get 1 or 2 applications.
Okay, so it's still happening for houses. It's not like the boat has kind of like come to a standstill,
not at all.
But it's just there's so much more demand for the units.
Yeah, because there is such a large cohort of Aussies that are now priced out of the affordability of renting a home.
So you said 29 applications, so not people coming, actually applying for the unit.
Yeah.
Right. And are you seeing any kind of difference? Is it newer units, older units, or like we were saying before with like Queenstown, like is it when they've got a bit more of a courtyard? What's got real demand around it?
Oh, real demand definitely does, happen for courtyards, but there is a market for everything.
Right. Okay. So it's just more, it sounds like it's coming back to that affordability, like you're saying, rather than it's this kind of unit everyone wants. It's more, it's this kind of price point everyone wants.
Correct.
Gotcha.
People have realised that, my income doesn't support me being in that. This is what I need to look to. But they want to stay in their, in their regions that they're living in. People don't want to be trudging into the city. So I would say that is a big driver as to why we have seen such an increase in the 3-month rental growth, because the demand is so big.
It's huge. Well, Beck, as a quick summary, so we've got Darlington at the top of the list for houses at 17.2%, Aberfoyle Park with a whopping 32.6% at the top of the list for units. And as far as the big change you guys are seeing on the ground, unit demand is just off the charts. House demand still strong, but unit demand, we're talking like we're Terminator strong. It's next level.
Particularly in outlying suburbs, out of city areas.
Love it. This has given a lot of information and a lot for people to think about when it comes to the next investment choice, but also potentially the refinancing side of their existing portfolios as well. Beck, Dave from Trove, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this before we wrap things up today?
No, I think that's about it. It's just, interesting times.
Absolutely. Beck, Dave, thank you so much again for jumping on the show.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Todd.